Heartland Today, Episode 65 Recap New Chapter. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Heartland Today. Before we dive into our brand new episode, let's quickly revisit the intense events from the last chapter. In our unwritten Episode 65, Ty's team launched a daring ambush against Nathan's heavily guarded prisoner transport convoy. The attack unfolded on a narrow mountain road, shrouded in chaos and violence. Explosions lit up the night sky, bullets cut through the cold air, and in the middle of this explosive firefight, the team managed to breach one of the armored vans. Inside, they found and rescued Scott Cardinal, one of their own, pulling him to safety in a desperate fight for survival. But the victory came at a price. The second transport van, the one carrying Peter Morris, slipped past the blockade and disappeared into the darkness. Its destination was unknown, but the team feared the worst. And so, even though they had won, the taste of triumph was bittersweet. If you've been enjoying this new season, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, so you never miss a single chapter of this unfolding saga. A hollow victory. The night after the ambush, the team gathered in a secluded safe house, an A-frame cabin tucked deep in a quiet valley. Owned by Val Stanton, the place was far removed from the violence and fire of the mountains. It was warm, modern, and comfortable. But inside, the mood was anything but celebratory. The main room was heavy with exhaustion and unspoken grief. The team sat in silence, their bodies aching, their nerves frayed, each one nursing a steaming mug of coffee. The adrenaline that had carried them through the chaos had faded away, leaving behind only weariness. Yes, they had brought Scott home. He was alive. He was here, wrapped in a thick blanket by the fire. But the empty space where Peter should have been was like a wound none of them could ignore. Scott was not the man they remembered. His ordeal had changed him. His once steady and reassuring presence was gone, replaced by a gaunt frame, a pale face and eyes that looked haunted, fixed on the flames as if searching for something far away. He barely spoke, his silence more chilling than any wound. Scott's truth. Ty knelt beside him, his voice careful, soft, almost pleading. "Scott, we're so glad you're back. We're so glad you're safe." Scott gave only the smallest nod, his gaze never leaving the fire. "But we need your help. We have to find Peter. Anything you remember, anything you heard, no matter how small, it could lead us to him." For a long time, Scott said nothing. It was as though he was reaching deep into a well, pulling fragments of memory from a place so dark it almost broke him to touch it. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, raspy, the sound of someone who hadn't used it in months. "It wasn't a prison. Not like yours, Caleb. There were no beatings, no obvious cruelty. It was worse." His words painted a terrifying picture. He described a sterile, windowless world, white walls, endless silence, a low hum that never stopped. A place where every detail was designed to unbalance the mind. Meals would be brought in and then taken away before he could eat. The temperature shifted from sweltering heat to freezing cold without warning. He wasn't tortured physically. Instead, his mind was broken down piece by piece. They wanted him compliant. They wanted him hollow. The room listened in silence, horror dawning on each face. And then Scott revealed the most devastating truth. The guards. They changed after the news about Price's company. They were nervous, whispering in the corridors. Something had shifted. And then the order came down. His hollow eyes lifted to Ty, but this time there was a spark of fire in them. Nathan is unraveling. He's pulling everything, every asset, every person he thinks is valuable, into one place. He called it his final sanctuary, the mountain fortress. That's where Peter was headed. That's where Amy is. It's his endgame. The words landed like a hammer. Their worst fear was confirmed. By saving Scott, they had unknowingly hastened the fate of Peter and Amy, trapped together in a place that everyone agreed was untouchable. Ty clenched his fists, his frustration burning like acid. "So we pulled one out, only to watch the other two locked away somewhere we can never reach." The safe house was silent again, But this time, it wasn't the quiet of exhaustion. It was the silence of hopelessness. The Fortress King. Far away, inside the mountain fortress, Nathan Price stood in his command center. He was motionless, hands clasped behind his back, watching the ambush footage replay again and again on a massive screen. Smoke, gunfire, his men scrambling, his transport breached, and Scott Cardinal, snatched from his grip by the very people who haunted his empire like ghosts. Behind him, Gracie stood silently, studying her employer. She had seen him furious before, violent, explosive, out of control. But this wasn't that. This was worse. This was cold fury. The fury of a man who saw himself as a king, now outmaneuvered. A god reminded of his mortality. Finally, Nathan shut the screen off. Darkness filled the room. His voice was a venomous whisper. Pathetic. Outmaneuvered by a horse doctor and a washed-up rodeo star. My empire, my entire multi-million-dollar security network, brought to its knees by sentimental ranchers with a grudge. He turned to Gracie, his eyes sharp and merciless. This was my failure. I scattered my assets thinking I made them harder to find. I was wrong. I didn't create strongholds. I created weaknesses, loose threads, and they pulled one. He moved to the massive window, staring at the jagged storm peaks that surrounded his fortress. His voice hardened. No more. No more scattered assets. From now on, everything comes under one roof. My roof. The war will be fought on my terms, on my ground. A new prize. His focus sharpened. They got the doctor. A sentimental loss, nothing more, but they didn't get the peace I truly need. Gracie stiffened. She knew immediately who he meant. Peter Morris, the strategist, the businessman, a man whose mind could rival Nathan's own. The media war is collapsing. My board is panicking. The government is closing in. I need someone who can hold my empire together. And the universe, oh, the irony, has delivered him straight to me. A slow, cruel smile curved across Nathan's lips. I won't just imprison him. I won't waste his talent. No, Peter will save me. He will fight this war for me, whether he wants to or not. He will become the architect of his own family's ruin. He pressed a button on his desk intercom. Kessler. Yes, sir? Divert the Morris transport. Bring him directly here. Prepare the West Wing suite. Our new consultant will require an office. Nathan cut the connection, satisfied. He had lost a pawn. But now, he was about to capture the bishop. Peter's arrival. The ride up to the fortress was long, winding, and suffocating. Peter sat shackled in the back of the armored van, his mind racing faster than the engine beneath him. The narrow mountain roads twisted endlessly, cutting through black pines and sheer drops. With every turn, he realized how far from civilization he was being taken. When the gates of the fortress finally loomed into view, massive steel doors cut into the face of the mountain. It felt less like a prison and more like the entrance to another world. The convoy rolled through, swallowed whole by darkness, until it emerged into a cavernous courtyard lit by cold floodlights. Nathan Price was waiting. Dressed immaculately, his posture regal, Nathan extended a hand as if greeting a guest at a gala. Peter Morris, he said smoothly. Welcome. You've been expected. Peter didn't take the hand. He only stared, his jaw tight, his silence deliberate. Nathan's smile only widened. You'll speak. In time. For now, let me show you your new home. And with that, Peter was escorted inside. Not to a cell, but to a lavish suite of offices and quarters, every detail luxurious. The message was clear. He wasn't a prisoner in chains. He was a prisoner of comfort, meant to be softened, tempted, manipulated. But Peter knew better. The West Wing. The suite was surreal. Thick carpets muffled every step. Expensive books lined the shelves. A desk, polished to perfection, waited with neatly stacked paper. Even the bed was draped in fine linen. Nathan gestured grandly. You see, Peter, you're not my enemy. You're my salvation. My board is panicking, my investors are restless, my enemies are circling. I need a mind like yours, someone who understands business, politics, and loyalty. You can be the one to hold this empire together." Peter finally spoke, his voice cold but steady. "You've destroyed families. You've destroyed lives. You've stolen my daughter's peace and my wife's freedom, and you expect me to help you?" Nathan laughed softly. "No, Peter. I don't expect. I demand. And I will not demand with threats or violence. I will use the only leverage you truly care about." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "Your family, Amy, Katie, Lou, their fates now rest in my hands. Refuse me, and they vanish. Cooperate, and they live comfortably, perhaps even happily." Peter's fists clenched, his nails digging into his palms. He wanted to strike. He wanted to spit in Nathan's face. But he also knew violence here would solve nothing. He had to play the game. Through clenched teeth, he said, "You'll never break me." Nathan's smile was infuriatingly calm. "We'll see." The team's resolve. Back at the safe house, the team wrestled with despair. The news from Scott had shattered them. Nathan's fortress was impregnable. Its defenses were layered, its walls carved from the mountain itself, and its location nearly impossible to reach without detection. But defeat wasn't in Ty's vocabulary. Slamming his fist against the table, he declared, "I'm not leaving Peter there. I'm not leaving Amy there. I don't care if it takes every ounce of strength we have. We're getting them back." The fire in his words sparked something in the others. Jess tightened her jaw. Caleb adjusted the bandage on his arm, eyes blazing with stubbornness. Even Scott, still weak, looked up with the faintest glimmer of his old determination. They had done the impossible before. They could do it again. Jess spread out maps and stolen blueprints on the table. The fortress is built into the mountain itself. There are 3 known entrances: front gates, a helicopter pad, and a maintenance shaft. The first 2 are suicide. But the shaft, if we can get close enough, it might be our way in. Caleb smirked. A ventilation shaft. Classic. But Ty didn't smile. He was already forming the plan, already weighing the risks. "We'll need disguises, access codes, timing, and a distraction big enough to keep Nathan's men off us while we move inside." Scott finally spoke, his voice hoarse but steady. "I can help. I know some of their internal routines, shift changes, security rotations. It's not much, but it might give us the edge." The spark of hope grew brighter. Nathan's shadow war. While the team planned, Nathan moved pieces of his own. In his war room, maps of the valley glowed under harsh light. Red markers indicated loyal assets. Blue markers showed recent losses. His empire was shrinking, his grip weakening, but his arrogance only grew sharper. He summoned Gracie. Their attack was bold, which means they're desperate. Desperation leads to recklessness. We'll let them come. We'll open just enough of a door to lure them in. And when they step through, he clenched his fist. We close it forever. Gracie hesitated. She had seen him spiral before, but this was different. The calm, methodical cruelty was back, and she knew, somewhere deep down, that he might succeed. Amy's silence. Inside the fortress, Amy's world had shrunk to a series of locked rooms and guarded hallways. She was allowed walks in a manicured courtyard, but only under watch. Her strength came from one thing, knowing Peter might be close. Though she hadn't seen him yet, she had overheard whispers from guards, the new guest in the West Wing. The man Nathan seemed obsessed with. She clung to hope. If Peter was here, then maybe, just maybe, the team was coming. At night, she would stare out the small, barred window, the moonlight painting silver lines across the stone. Her whispered words carried into the dark. Hold on, Peter. Hold on. We'll get out of this. The plan takes shape. Back at the safe house, the strategy grew bolder. They would infiltrate during a supply delivery using stolen uniforms and forged IDs. Caleb and Jess would cause chaos at the outer gates, drawing fire and attention, while Ty, Scott, and Val would slip through the maintenance shaft. It was madness. The odds were nearly impossible. But every member of the team knew one thing. If they didn't act, Peter and Amy were lost forever. Ty's voice cut through the doubts. "We've been fighting for too long. Sacrificed too much to stop now. This is it. The final fight, and we're going to win." The infiltration begins. The night was black, pierced only by slivers of moonlight reflecting off icy peaks. The team approached the fortress in silence. Hearts pounded. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of wind was amplified. Jess and Caleb moved first, disguised as delivery personnel, dragging crates that contained more than just supplies. They carried explosives and distraction devices. Ty, Scott, and Val followed the faint route leading to the maintenance shaft, cloaked by darkness and the chaos his teammates would create. The outer gates erupted in controlled confusion. Smoke grenades hissed, lights flashed, and Nathan's men scrambled, shouting orders into radios. In the midst of the chaos, the team slipped past guards, their movements precise, rehearsed and deadly silent. Peter, monitoring the fortress network from the west wing, saw the commotion on his screen. His heart raced. The timing was perfect. Amy, aware of the disturbance, crouched behind a hedge in the courtyard, ready to act. Inside the fortress, Peter moved quietly through the corridors, blending with guards delivering meals and supplies. He accessed cameras and security logs, leaving false trails, rerouting patrols. Every step was a calculated risk. One mistake could trigger alarms that would endanger both him and Amy. Amy's pulse raced as she followed signals Peter had found. Every corridor, every turn, brought her closer to freedom. The fortress, built as a monument to Nathan's arrogance, was now a labyrinth waiting to be dismantled by determination, courage, and trust. The reunion. Finally, in a small, dimly lit suite tucked deep in the west wing, they found each other. Peter's eyes met Amy's. No words were needed. Relief, hope, and determination passed between them in an instant. Together, they worked, coordinating with Ty, Jess, Scott, and Val through encrypted radios. Their plan wasn't just to escape. They had to cripple Nathan's fortress, leaving him with nothing but his fury. The counter-strike explosions and controlled chaos tore through the outer walls. Guards were drawn away by staged threats, allowing Amy and Peter to move unimpeded through the inner corridors. Peter's access to the fortress network was a weapon. Cameras flickered and looped, doors unlocked remotely, and the alarms that might have doomed them were silenced just in time. Amy, with her sharp instincts honed from years at Heartland, guided the team through hidden passageways and emergency stairwells. Every step brought them closer to the gates, closer to the mountain's edge, and finally, freedom. Nathan's fury. From the command center, Nathan watched his empire crumble. "Impossible!" he shouted. Screens flickered as Peter manipulated the system, and Amy's team moved with surgical precision. Floodlights were disabled. Security doors cycled open and closed, trapping guards. Nathan's voice trembled, not from fear, but from fury. Gracie tried to calm him, but he was lost in the madness of his own unraveling. The man who believed himself infallible was now witnessing the perfect failure of his carefully orchestrated fortress. Escape into the mountains. The team reached the outer gates just as dawn painted the peaks with gold. Helicopters were waiting, coordinated by Scott and Caleb, who had taken to the skies as part of the diversion. Amy and Peter climbed aboard, the wind whipping through their hair, hearts still racing but eyes filled with triumph. Below, Nathan's fortress stood, a monument to power that had failed to contain the human spirit. The aftermath. Back at the safe house, the team finally exhaled. Scars and bruises marked their bodies, but their spirits were unbroken. Peter, exhausted but alive, hugged Amy, both silently acknowledging the dangers they had survived together. Ty, Jess, and Scott shared smiles, the kind born of battles fought and won. Val, ever the strategist, quietly monitored the network, ensuring no trace of them remained behind. Nathan, humiliated and enraged, retreated into the shadow of his fortress, his empire shaken, but his obsession with control far from over. The war wasn't finished, but the tide had shifted. A new dawn. The sun rose over the Heartland Valley. Horses grazed peacefully. The mountains, once a symbol of imprisonment, now gleamed like sentinels of freedom. Life at Heartland continued, resilient as ever. Amy knelt beside a horse, her hands gentle, her heart full. Peter stood close, a quiet guardian. Together, they had endured the storm. Together, they would face whatever came next. And far away, in a fortress carved from stone and pride, Nathan plotted anew, unaware that the people he had sought to control had found strength far beyond his reach. Because in Heartland, love, courage, and determination were the forces that no fortress, no matter how fortified, could ever contain. The journey was far from over, but one thing was certain. When the Heartland family stands together, even the darkest mountain can be conquered.